Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss a very interesting topic, one that I am half scared of discussing, but it must be done. It must be done because we have those people everywhere. We have them in our families, in our workplace, as friends, as acquaintances. They are everywhere. Toxic people. But before we continue, I must make a distinction. There are no such people as toxic people. However, there are people that behave in a toxic manner. In other words, let's give them benefit of that. Let's say they're good people that behave in a very toxic way. So toxic people can drain you. They can drain your energy, they can drain your emotion, they can drain you. So, what is a toxic behavior? A toxic behavior is any behavior that can cause harm, psychological harm, emotional harm to another person. Is a toxic behavior. These people behave in such a way that they can downright be abusive. They are very negative. They complain. They can gaslight you. They can manipulate. They can lie. They can do whatever it takes. They criticize a lot and they never take accountability. Everything is somebody else's fault. They blame someone else for everything. And if you try to correct them, good luck, because they can lash out, they can even fight you because they never take correction, they never take accountability. Everything is somebody else's fault. And they keep repeating the same toxic behavior because they lack empathy. They don't think about the next person. It's all about them. They tend to be very selfish. So it's a whole lot of attributes of a toxic behavior. But however, let's continue. Now, what can you do when you have these kind of people in your life? The number one thing you have to do is set boundaries. And that's what we're going to focus today's video on. We're going to focus today's video on setting boundaries, the type of boundaries, and how to set them. Because you have to protect yourself. You know, some people think that they can change a toxic person, they can make them to behave differently. You can't change anybody. The only person you can change is yourself. Unless they decide to change, nobody is changing them. Nobody can change anybody. That's one thing we must all understand. So now, to set boundaries is something you must do. But before you set these boundaries, you must communicate. So what is boundaries? Boundaries are established limits that you set for yourself in order to protect yourself and be able to continue healthy relationships. So it's a limit, kind of a guideline, kind of rules that you set for others on how they can treat you. So boundaries is meant to keep maintain a healthy emotional state or your well-being or your mental health, not necessarily to be selfish, not necessarily to cut people off, not necessarily to be mean. So you have to also be self-aware. You have to look inwards, be able to know what is stressing you, why is it stressing you, to be able to recognize your own self, your needs. Make sure that your intentions are good. It's meant to protect you and not to be selfish. For example, if your friend is asking you for a ride and you know their car just broke down, of course, giving them a ride, you're not going to say, I'm going to set boundaries and make sure I don't pick up anybody on my way to work. No, that's in a way being selfish. You're still required to help people. You're still required to be there for people. You're still required to be good to people, to support people. Again, that's why we're here. But then if that friend that needs a ride today, tomorrow they call you again, next tomorrow they call you again, in 1 month they're still calling you every day, and you know they have a way to fix their car, but they're not being responsible about it, or they simply don't care because they don't mind disturbing someone else. Okay, now that is different. Now you can set boundary and be able to say, I will pick you up one more time, but I won't be able to pick you up as from tomorrow. So that is an example of setting boundary. Boundary is a limit that you set actually for yourself. And before you set that boundary, make sure you understand that if that boundary is crossed, you have a game plan on what to do. So you have everything established before you even communicate. Because another thing, before you set a boundary, you must communicate that boundary. You must communicate it to the person involved. Let's say somebody that is doing something you don't like, before you say, okay, I will not take this anymore, I will do this when they do this, you have to communicate to that person. You have to let them know, hey, this behavior that you have been doing for a while is actually making me uncomfortable. I haven't been able to discuss it with you, but I'm discussing it now because I would like for us to continue a good relationship, and I wouldn't want this to to come in the way. I would like for you to stop doing this because it makes me feel this way. I would like for you to stop doing this because it affects me in this way. So you have to communicate. Another thing, that different types of boundaries, there's emotional, there's physical, there's time based, and there's financial. We're going to take this one at a time. But before we do, we want to make sure that we understand perfectly what we're talking about. Okay, I'm going to give you examples of how to set these boundaries. There is something that I came up with that you can use. For example, you be like, you do positive, then negative. For example, if somebody is asking you to do something, you don't want to do it again because they've been asking and you feel like they could have done better by now, you can say, yes, I will do this one more time, but I won't be able to do it again after this time. Yes, I will lend you this money, but I will not be able to lend you another money after this time. Yes, I will take you to work, but after today, I won't be able to pick you up anymore. So you give the positive, then you give the negative or the limitation. So that's how you can continue to set boundaries. Now, what is an emotional boundary? Emotional boundary is something that drains you. For example, you have a friend that keeps complaining about the same thing over and over and over. Let's use an example. I don't know how, let's say a friend that keeps complaining to you. Oh, I don't know how, I don't like my job. My job is draining. They don't pay me enough. They don't do this. They don't do that. They don't do every day the same complaint. Every day the same complaint. You are tired because you're thinking, why do they stay in the same job and they complain every single day? After a while, you are tired of listening to that. You would like to hang out with your friend, but you don't want to hear about their crappy job anymore because they refuse to do something about it. You can actually say, hey, I wouldn't mind hanging out with you, but I wouldn't want to discuss your job anymore because I feel like there's other things you can do, and I don't want it to take away from our time of discussing other things or enjoying our time together. So you can say something like that. So that would be an example of emotional boundary. Let's talk about physical boundary. Physical boundary is actually removing yourself from the situation. For example, if somebody begins to talk about something that is upsetting to you, or they begin to discuss a topic that they know is controversial and you don't really want to engage in it, you can simply just step away. You can simply just leave the room. You can simply just not show up if you know what is already going to happen. So, physical boundary is you actually removing yourself from that person or that situation, or when they begin that toxic behavior. Another one is financial boundary. Financial boundary is setting a budget for yourself, is having a limit to how much you can spend on what. And financial boundary can include when friends borrow money from you. You can set a boundary on how much you can lend or when you can lend, and be able to set a boundary and stick to it. And of course, again, like I said, you have to communicate that boundary, and you have to also know that these are friends that may be taking advantage, and not when somebody really needs to be helped, because that's what friends are for after all. So, but you also know when someone is taking advantage to be able to set that boundary. So now let's talk about time-based boundary. Time-based boundary is actually knowing and dedicating a particular amount of time to a particular activity and sticking to it. being able to say no, being able to focus your time on what is important to you, and being able to allocate appropriate time to different activities. For example, let's say you hang out with your friend on Thursdays, and on Thursdays you know you have 2 hours to spend. But your friend, by the time you get to the restaurant where you guys meet, and your friend always show up 1 hour late, and you're sitting there by yourself waiting, after a few times or after one time, you can actually discuss with your friend and tell them, I usually have 2 hours to spend on Thursdays because I have other things to do. If you're going to show up 1 hour late, that means by the time you show up, I will only have enough time to say hello and then leave. And after discussing that boundary, the next time they do it, you actually get up and leave because you have communicated this boundary. You are not being selfish. It's not fair on you because you have created a time-based boundary for yourself, and you actually do have other things to do. So you don't want your friend showing up 1 hour late and you end up spending 3 hours when you have budgeted only two. So things like that, that would be example of time-based boundary. So it's so many examples when other people behavior begin to harm yours. You can create boundaries. It's not just in this area. There are so many other areas. For example, somebody that keeps borrowing something from you, keeps borrowing, maybe keeps borrowing your, what will I say, that women borrow from each other. Maybe keep borrowing your purse. Okay? They borrow your purse and they don't return it, and you, when you get ready to go out, you yourself, you're looking for a purse. After a while, you can have a conversation. You can say, I don't mind letting you use my purse, but if you don't return it next time, I will not be able to borrow you my purse again. And actually stick to that. If they don't return it next time, you don't borrow them your purse anymore. It's not being selfish, it's not being bad. And if that friend does not understand why you have to do that and begins to fight you, then trust me, that's not a friend that you want anyway. Because anybody that borrows something over and over and don't return it, and making you have a situation where you yourself that owns the purse don't have a purse to use, that person should actually be apologetic and not get angry for that. So that will tell on their behavior, and you may not even need such people around. That pretty much sums up toxic behavior and what to do about it and how to handle it. However, I don't want to end this video without making a few points. I mean, there's so much depth to this, but I'm trying to keep my videos as short as possible. Okay? However, you as a person, before you begin to set boundaries or before you begin to create boundaries for yourself and others, make sure that you are not the one exhibiting toxic behavior. Okay, search yourself. Make sure you're not the one harming other people emotionally and psychologically with your behavior. It's always important to self reflect. I believe in self reflecting. Whenever I'm having any type of conflict, I often will sit back and say, what role did I play? Could I have done something better? Could I have done something differently? So it's always good to self reflect. And if you're the one behaving in a toxic way, you can make a change. You can make a change. I believe anybody can change. You just have to put in the work. Okay? Put in the work. Slowly, you will begin to make a change. So let's make sure we're not the ones behaving in a toxic manner. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you all for listening. Now let's go out there and have wonderful relationships. And if anybody is bringing drama, bringing abuse, bringing all this, we now know how to set boundaries and remove ourselves from such behavior without being mean or without destroying the relationship, because it's actually designed to continue to maintain your relationships and not to end them. Because if somebody behaves in a toxic way, you don't have to do this, do that. You can just cut that person off, block them, and that. But that is not the goal. The goal is not to cut people off. The goal is to be able to manage that relationship by being able to set boundaries for yourself and set boundaries for them that they cannot cross, and being able to uphold those boundaries and still maintain that relationship. Now, of course, if it becomes too much and nothing is working, It's not wrong to remove yourself from a situation, to cut back on your relationship with somebody. But it's always good to know when to do that, because sometimes it's necessary for your mental health and for your emotional health. Now, thank you so much for listening. If you have not, please like this video, subscribe, comment, share. Okay? Share so we can continue to create awareness, so people will know what to do if they encounter toxic people. Until next time, may God bless you. Thank you. Bye.